Hello and welcome to Game Pass Forever, a standalone segment of the Outstanding Outside is Overrated podcast. Each month we dive into a new game off the Xbox Game Pass lineup as voted on by our Patreon supporters. This segment exists because of the generous support of our backers on Patreon. If you enjoy this content, please visit patreon.com/OiO and pledge $2 a month to support the show. Outside is Overrated is presented by Premier Health. Check out their website at premierhealthmn.com. That's premierhealthmn as in Minnesota.com. I'm your host, Tom Logic, and joining me tonight are the Hobbybox, Joe Burns.
Heyo.
And Dr. C, Casey Aline.
Hey, what's going on, everybody?
For June's Game Pass Forever game, we played Loop Hero by Russian developer 4 Quarters. Released in March 2021, Loop Hero has a Metacritic rating of 82 on PC. The core gameplay loop, your hero auto-walks in a long loop fighting slimes. Slimes drop loot cards that you can place on the board. New cards unlock environments and new enemies. You constantly swap out gears, you battle enemies, and collect resources. Each time you complete a loop, you choose whether to return to camp or press on to the boss. In between loops, you spend resources to build new areas of your base or upgrade facilities. Between runs, you can also edit the deck of cards and choose a hero type. Casey, you put this thing up and didn't play it until yesterday. Why exactly do you hate OiO listeners?
So, before, I didn't play games, evidently, and now I don't play them enough. I don't really get it. What's going on here?
It's nothing is ever enough with Tom.
It sounds like it, yeah.
Speaking of that, how's Kingdom Hearts coming, my friend?
There's 2 other games we're playing for the podcast by the time we get there. So.
So let's start with the strongest element of Loop Hero, the story. You play as an amnesiac hero. You take on a handful of bosses. There's a couple of random townsfolk with a couple of lines of dialogue. Joey, did you care about the story in Loop Hero?
I mean, I thought it was fine. It was interesting.
Fine and interesting. That is high praise for this game.
So until I saw this in the show notes, I didn't really have an issue with the story in this game. So I'm curious, since you seem to have all the quibbles about it. What is it that you think is just an abomination that is this game's story?
Okay, abomination is a strong word. I was openly hostile towards the story in this game, and it just didn't do anything for me. The world has forgotten everything. So you're playing as this amnesiac hero who doesn't know anything about anything, which was a hilarious episode of Bluey, but that's another topic for another discussion. And just all the dialogue all just fell flat for me. It's like amnesiac hero runs into a boss, and it's like, oh, I'm doing this because God tells me to. It's like, oh, well, I don't want to be exterminated. And then he runs into the next boss who's doing it for another reason. He's like, oh, well, I still don't want to be exterminated. So maybe I'm just being a touch overly dramatic here, but I didn't think the story was interesting, noteworthy, or good. It didn't even reach my minimum threshold for an acceptable status for a story for a game.
Also, for instance, I think the pieces that caught my attention more than anything was because I only beat the first boss, the Lich, and once you face the Lich, he says some things that are just interesting about his role in how things are the way they are, and that they needed to happen that way for some reason or another. So I thought that was intriguing, and that kind of that drove me to try to see more of what was going on in the game, and so I think there's nuggets of stuff in there. It's not a story dominated game by any stretch of the imagination, and it wasn't trying to be. It's this is Russian level storytelling. You get what story we give you. It be little story, but it be all it is. So that's why it made lots of sense. When you said it was a Russian developer, it's what you do in game, you walk in circle. You fight things that come out. They get harder. Life gets harder as you go on, but it's same every time.
Yeah, so is that all that War and Peace is?
I don't know. I've never read War and Peace.
Yeah, that's a Tolstoy novel, though, right?
Maybe?
Yeah, I know about this Earth. I know some cultural reference. Casey, I guess you're the tiebreaker here. Did the story do much for you?
I thought the story was fine. It didn't... It's not the main driving force for why I wanted to continue playing the game, but I felt like it was a good enough backdrop for what was going on. It kept me interested. There's different things that were piquing my interest as it goes on. Like, why after you beat the Lich are you the only one that remembers that he came down from the sky? I don't know if you ever find anything out, like why the townsfolk don't seem to have any idea what the heck is going on, and why you're the only one that does that. But like that's interests me. And then just I don't know. Like I said, it's not the main reason I like the game, but it's not game breaking for me.
Yeah, I got to a point where every time everyone said something, I was just hitting A as fast as I could to try to progress.
What in the world? I don't understand how it made you so openly hostile. Was it just like frustration with other aspects of the game that led you to take it out on the dialogue bubbles and just like?
I think that the dialogue bubbles were just the weak part of the game. And I was with you to the Lich. Like, I thought the Lich, I'm like, oh, okay, pretty interesting. All right, then I got to the second boss. I'm like, okay, yeah, that's a strong take from a different archetype of character. Third boss, another strong take from another archetype of character. And like, I guess nothing seemed to actually work together. It's just a bunch of random things that a bunch of random people that I didn't care about say.
Well, the one thing I will say is that it gets to a point. So it gets to a point after a while that you get, because everything with the story is tied into developing the town or fighting a boss. And or fighting like a new type of monster or enemy type. So like when you first spawn the bandits, they say stuff to you. When you first spawn the vampires, they'll say something to you, and then that's it. Unless something triggers more of those discussions to happen later on in the game. So if you get stuck not really developing much in your town for a while, like, you just don't get any story. There's like nothing to learn about things because you're not actually changing the world at all, and so that would be a detriment. But that's a little bit less on the story and a little bit more just on, I guess, my experiences with the gameplay. I guess
I would argue that having unlocked every card or every building in town and facing, I think, the majority of enemies, like, there's just nothing interesting there.
Okay, well, that's that's unfortunate.
I wouldn't say I hated it with a burning fiery passion, but it was down the street from that.
See, if I was in, if you were me in my boots and I was in your boots, Tom would say to you, "You hated this game with a burning fiery passion." Why?
Yeah, that's why I preempted it. Yeah, exactly. If I'd be me, then you'd be. If you were me, then I'd be you. Then I'd use your body to reach the top. You couldn't stop me no matter who you are. Casey, did the monster slaying make up for the story? Also, I've seen Ace Ventura. That was a movie reference. That was for you.
Thank you. Ace Ventura is a fantastic movie.
It's been ages since I've seen it.
Well, I mean, we know that we don't. We know that I don't play.
There's actually Ace Ventura
games.
2, which sucked.
Okay, yeah.
So I don't play games, right? So I'm pretty sure this is the first game where I've ever played where the combat is auto combat.
Have you played any kind of auto runner like Temple Run or the Mario one, or like there's been other like auto runners that have captured the public attention, right?
No, and like what's the one that Vampire Survivors? Like, I never played that one.
Not an auto runner. Auto battler, not an auto runner.
But still, like
you're millions of miles of difference.
You're still just upgrading your guys and doing stuff and basically just running in a circle while it does it for you. But anywho, like the thing that makes this game fun and interesting for me was just adapting to every single loop. So when your new loop starts, the shape of it and the different cards and everything that you select, how to lay those out on the board, that was interesting. And then, just trying to not overwhelm your hero, but still provide you with enough resources for what you need to build the next square in your town. That was kind of fun and challenging. And then creating different builds with the random items given to you, I think, kept it fun and interesting too.
Yeah, so I would say that, like, initially, that definitely carried the day for me as well. And I did really enjoy playing through it for that first, like, 5-ish hours of the game, up until when I, beat the Lich, finished the first loop, started the second loop, and unlocked the third class. It was like, okay, this is awesome. Like, I'm getting into this and everything like that. And it ground to a halt at that point for me. And I think there wasn't anything that was changing with the game once I tried out the 2 other classes a few times, and it felt like, I don't know, that's where the game started to break down into just a grind for me, where it's like, okay, well, I just run around, and then I either choose to jump out of the loop and retain what little resources I gained in those few loops, or risk it one more time around to get the legitimate amounts of resources that I maybe need to develop things. And, you know, there's a good chance I die before I get to the end of the loop, and I get, like, jack squat for resources, and then I try it again.
And you get 30% of your resources.
Yeah.
It could be worse. It could be a quarter.
It could be worse. But, so, like, that's the thing. There's, like, no in-between. It's like, if you start the loop, that's all you really get. Unless I didn't notice that leaving the loop on your own accord actually nets you a few more resources than if you die.
60%.
Oh,
Yep.
See, it wasn't super clear to me. And I think, like, it's just really hard to tell what all of the resources are.
It was brutal.
Yeah.
Did you unlock the building that gave you the encyclopedia?
No.
Yeah, so eventually there's an encyclopedia, and it has like all the monsters, it has all the resources in it. But even once I had that unlocked, it was still a pain in the butt to find out what each of the icons meant, who would drop it. And it's like, I need to play on PC where I could hover over stuff, because it plays mostly fine on console. And I played it on PC, I played it on Xbox, I played it on Steam Deck. Mostly fine on console, but the controls, this was definitely a computer game. And it's easier to just mouse wherever you need to mouse, because on a controller, you need to hold left trigger to place your cards. You hold right trigger to place your items from your inventory onto your character. And then in town, you kind of use everything.
Yeah.
And
You didn't have to use that, though.
Did
No.
you just smash your screen with your controller or what?
I just used my joystick like a mouse.
To hover over
Yeah, I
and
just
select
hovered over
things.
it and selected it, and then went up there instead of using the
Yeah.
right trigger, left trigger,
Huh.
because I found it really frustrating to play that
I had
way.
no idea.
Works like on the main screen, like the main gameplay screen when you're actually in the loop. I found that the controls were fine through that aspect of it, and you get used to it enough. But on the menu, like when you're back in town and you're having to bounce between like the menu where you either go to the expedition or you try to build, that was where it just got to be just cumbersome to switch between those two. It's like, oh, okay, I gotta hit B to back out to get to that menu, as opposed to the other one where it was, you know, you get used to it. Like left stick is to select the things down for your cards, and then right stick was to select the stuff that's in the menu side on the right side of the screen to equip your stuff. So I don't know why it did this like sort of change in how it needed to control on that screen. And it's hard. I mean, trying to change things from, you know, just a mouse selecting things and dragging them to where they need to go. It's hard to translate that into how you're like accessing stuff with a controller. But like in the menu, you can't even get over to the right side using the joystick. It just stops right at the menu. And so you have to be like, okay, I got to exit out to go to this and blah, blah, blah.
Hard, yes, I'm sure it is hard, but possible. Darkest Dungeon mapped wonderfully to a controller. That was much more involved in like every aspect. Well, no, wonderfully.
I was going to say, I don't know if I go to wonderfully, but it was
Well
better
enough.
than this.
Yeah, it was better than this. I thought the monster slaying was pretty fun. I thought the push your luck mechanic was pretty fun. And I had a very up and down experience with this game. Burns, I was right with you through that first 5 or 6 hours, and through even the first 2 boss fights. I was really having a lot of fun. And then like I needed specific resources to either level up my buildings in town or to build new buildings, and that got to be such a slog. And I wound up realizing that I could reliably survive 5 loops, and it was usually on that 6th loop that I died. So I'm like, all right, 5 loops, peace out. And it's like, that's not a super fun way to play a game. It's like grind out 5 loops as fast as it got to the point where I wasn't even paying attention to gear anymore.
Yeah.
It's like, put up the highest number and the orangest gear. Just like, doesn't matter. I'm probably going to survive this run anyways. I need this wood, so let's just get this run done, and maybe we can unlock the next building and actually have fun again.
Yeah, because that's where I bogged down, is trying to get enough resources. And it's really just one resource type that I need to get to, but I'm still like 7 behind on it. And
Was it wood, or was it the...
It's some conglomeration of resources that once you collect them, it makes one thing, and you have to do it like it's one of the circle things with like an arrow on it or whatever. Lord friggin' knows what it actually is. I mean, I know you can hit the right stick in to see what your bag is and what everything sort of turns into, but it's something that takes like a lot of grinding. And that's the supply depot, which every other building is sort of stuck behind once you get to like that middle part or early middle part of the game. And so it's just like, okay, well, I come back and I still don't have enough to unlock it. I guess I'll upgrade a building then, because it's at least I'm getting something out of it. But then that's probably setting me back a little bit more from unlocking the building. And so I kind of got like sort of caught between that. And I think, part of it might also lead into sort of, the reason why I feel like I stalled out on the game was also because of the fact that I didn't enjoy the last two classes as much as the first class.
Oh, let's dive into classes just a little bit later, because we are going to have a heated discussion there, my friend. Casey, you once built a base in Torchlight 3. Did you like building out your town in this game?
I found it actually kind of confusing. Like, I don't know. It just felt really random, I guess, more than anything. Like,
I just stuck things in the next space over, literally no thought.
The cool thing about Torchlight was, certain... I guess it's certain tiles and stuff give you different bonuses and things for this too, but it was very aesthetically pleasing in Torchlight. Like, you were making it actually look nice, and like you said, for this it was just everything is completely random, and I had no idea if placing other buildings next to other buildings gave them additional bonuses, because none of that is explained or anything like that. So for all I know, it did, and you just kind of gump your way into it, but there's no, like, I just thought it was really kind of confusing, and I was just trying to go to the buildings and squares that unlocked heroes first, for more than anything, and then the healing, the herbalist, I believe it was called. I wanted to unlock that potion that gave you some healing on your loop as well. That was the first thing that I went for.
Yeah,
and then
potions
after that,
are the best.
Then I went for the characters, and then my placement was just completely random. So, long story short, no, it wasn't as fun as building your base in Torchlight.
Bernsey, are you a big base builder? I know that when you play a game, you like to see everything, touch everything. Does that expand to the base building? Are you worried about min-maxing your captain's quarters in Mass Effect?
I never played enough of Mass Effect to get to the point where I needed to min-max my captain's quarters.
Yeah, I don't think you can actually adjust anything there. It was a terrible example. I realized I was talking myself into a corner, and the only lifeline was freaking Mass Effect.
Typically I do. So, like, for instance, like Suikoden. It's fun building out the base. Now, granted, you're not selecting what goes where per se, but it's fun to see everything fill up the more you do things, right?
You could have given me 100,000 games to guess that we would draw a comparison to from Loop Hero.
Yeah.
Suikoden would not have been on that list.
Yeah. But I don't know. Like, the base building was frustrating because that was always the bottleneck, right? That's the reason why you're going out on the loops to do things, and so then it's like, oh, okay, I come back. Or it's like that kick in the pants that it's like, oh, okay, I died again, and it looks like I can't really unlock anything, so it's back to the salt mines. I did, however, enjoy, like,
turning the game off and going
loop.
home.
No, building out stuff within the loop I thought was really fun and really interesting, and it's almost kind of sad because they showed that they could do stuff that was interesting and that allowed you to sort of build synergies with that part of the game, but they either didn't allow you to experiment enough with the base to be able to find those types of things, or they just didn't put that into there. It's almost like the base building was an afterthought. It's just like, well, develop this stuff, and when you come around to the campfire, you're going to get crap. Enjoy.
Was it an afterthought, or was it artificially inserted to inflate the length of time it took for the game? Like, one of the early buildings you unlock allows you to gain experience points, so you can level up and gain abilities for your hero. Is that really something that we had to put behind a resource gate, or should we have just been able to level up like every other RPG that this game borrows from?
It's a good question. I'm not 100% sure. Everything around the game is all about doing actions to gain some sort of resource. So you either kill monsters to get gear, or you build structures to either boost your stats or gather resources as you go through the various structures or buy the various structures. And that's kind of the whole gameplay loop. So they had to have something for all of those resources to go into down the line. Otherwise, I don't know that going through the loop is as interesting if you're just watching experience points go up, and that's really it. So I feel like they needed something like that. I just don't feel like, at least as far as I am into the game, and from what you've said, it doesn't sound like it gets any better.
It most assuredly does not.
Okay, so it just feels like that's something that they could have done more with, or something that could have been more rewarding or more a more interesting aspect of the game than it actually ended up being.
We talked about how fun it was actually placing tiles on the board and like building out the loop that your hero is battling through. That ties to a deck building mechanic. You're unlocking cards throughout the game. Then you choose which cards you're going to put in your deck that comes into the adventure with you. Joey, how did you approach that deck building? How did you balance the like the monster cards versus the terrain cards to try to optimize your runs?
I mean, really, I would just. When you call it a deck builder, that it throws me for a loop because there's so few options that it's not much. There's not a whole lot of choice. It's like, oh, okay, I'm going to add in the groves, so then I'll add in the blood groves. Or
turns out blood groves are freaking clutch.
They can definitely be. And for a while, I got used to kind of the setup that I had, and I just rolled with it. There's certain terrain types that annoyed me a lot more than others.
Swamps, I'm guessing?
The one that annoyed me the most, actually, are wheat fields. Because, like, at least every third loop, I would have 5 wheat fields before I ever get a frickin' village. And that's annoying as heck.
Villages are crucial because you heal when you walk through a village. It's, I think, the only tile that will actually replenish your health in the middle of your loop. And you can put a wheat field on either side to boost the amount of healing that it does. But you can't place a wheat field without a village on the board.
Yeah, and that would happen with blood groves a little bit. I would get 1 or 2 before I'd get my first grove. But with wheat fields, it was just insane at times, and so that just that annoyed me a bit to the point where I stopped playing with the wheat fields for a while because it's just like, screw this noise.
But it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things because the cards just continue to fill up. So
right.
and if it goes over the edge, they just get discarded, and that's how you get your experience.
Right.
So if you have 5 wheat fields, and then who cares? Because they're going to cycle through eventually again anyways, and you're gaining experience that you're going to end up with. I'm sure it's
that
frustrating.
Opportunity cost, though. It's it's like, how much more would it help if I actually got a freaking village, much less that I have these 5 wheat fields taunting me, telling me, hey, guess how much you could have healed midway through the loop if you could have put down a village or 2.
Yeah.
That would be nice, wouldn't it? Too bad silly American can't heal, can he?
I'm with Burns. Like, each card has a purpose, and like the only times that I would fill up my hand of cards and have them start burning for resources was if I was very close to the end of the run and like I needed to carefully balance the monsters that were going back on the board.
Oh, that's funny. No, I did this all the time. Like, I would just let it continually fill up and keep my loop going because the traits that you get from leveling up are so helpful.
So you'd go to like level loop 22 just fighting slimes.
No. I would have like strategically placed things out there.
1 grove on this.
But like
on
there was
this
very few, like you
outside.
said, you stopped at
1
like loop
cemetery
5
on
all
the
the
right.
time. I would not stop until the monsters would get to like level 10 or 11 every single time. And I don't know how long that was, but like I got to a point where I wouldn't add anything else, like because once you get to a certain point, the lich spawns it once you place enough things out there. So I would stop probably about 90% of the way through, and I wouldn't put another thing on there, and I would just keep going through the loop over and over and over and over again until I had 3 or 4 different traits. And then by that time, I was like, well, I got a whole lot of resources. My health is finally getting a little bit low. Maybe then I should end it, or I would go on and fight the boss. But I would just continually let those cards just cycle through, just gaining experience. Like I'd get 3, 4, 5 a time coming out of there after every battle. So
meanwhile, you're holding your controller like a T-Rex and probably like whittling with your feet. I'm not sure that we play games the same way, my friend.
I think I think I played this one right.
I was gonna say, it seems like you were a lot less frustrated than like either of us were. So
No,
maybe
I
that
didn't-
is the right way to play it.
I mean, I'm only 10 hours into it, but
And
I
we're
beat,
about the
I beat,
same amount of
I beat the
playtime.
Lich.
Speak for
I've
yourself,
unlocked
big guy.
all 3 characters. Yeah, I know you're obviously
I
super
meant the
far.
2 of us.
But yeah, I'm not to the frustration point yet. But I also don't mind grindy games. I don't know. Like, I've been playing Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes for 5 years now, or whatever the heck it is, and that's like super grindy. So,
Yeah.
You should
for
play
me, something
Destiny,
like,
my friend. You would be a beast.
So I don't mind a little bit of grind.
So I guess that's the difference, because I bounced off of Galaxy of Heroes like ages ago, because the grind was just like pointless at that point. It felt like to me, but like what I like about the cards are the like random synergies that you find with them. So for instance, if you put 9 rocks or mountains together, they form like, I can't remember what it's called, but it's like a super mountain basically, and then that spawns harpies. Which I thought was, I don't know, it's just neat that finally you build all these things and then, oh, hey, it becomes this. Or the other thing that I noticed was, and I noticed it first with the treasuries, but it's basically any stone structure. If you put a meadow in the cardinal directions, it becomes like a blooming meadow, which is like double the HP regen at the start of your day, which I thought was a super neat little thing to find. And then it's like, okay, I got burned a couple too many times putting too many beacons around things, and once the monsters got like too numerous, they just slaughtered me. So then I started putting like the beacons out in like the Netherlands, and putting meadows around them to get more of the blooming meadows. And because that's basically how I would approach the board, is I would find like the 2 largest corners that had the most real estate. One of them would be meadow corner, the other one would be mountain corner. And it's like all my rocks and mountains just go in like a line and then build up around each other. And the same with the meadows. And then when I would get a treasury, I would drop it and then like surround it, and then just kind of go from there. And
just wait until you get trees and rivers, my dude. Like, no joke.
I was gonna say I didn't get any, I didn't unlock any of that stuff.
Trees are the most important card in the game. They boost your attack speed for every one you put down.
Really?
And then rivers will double the terrain tiles that they're next to you.
What is it that you need to unlock in order to unlock those cards?
Everything.
No, what I mean, what do you have to open up to get those? Like, what gives you those cards?
Everything. They're at the far ends of the building.
So you have to get to the end of the building and tree and art. Okay.
Yeah.
Which is also why you like the Necromancer, because the things that spawn the trees don't attack. What are they? They don't attack your hero.
Yeah, they only counterattack.
Yeah, so like your hero as the Necromancer doesn't attack, only your skeletons do. So you actually never get hit playing against the tree people.
Tree dudes, yeah. Before we move on to classes, Casey, how did you approach the deck building aspects? Because I never played with the beacon. Like, I removed the beacon after, like, fighting the Lich.
Yeah, I was the same with the beacon, where I only played with the beacon if I was playing as the Necromancer, because then my skeletons got that 20% boost in attack speed, and I hated playing with the beacon as the warrior or the rogue, because you're just yourself, and there's constantly you're running into 3-4 enemies at a time, so they were the only ones that were really able to capitalize on that speed boost. So I learned quickly that was a bad idea.
Unless you get the road light posts or whatever the heck they're called, you can put those around areas. Because that's what I would try to do, is if I was laying down villages, I'd keep the beacons as far away from those as possible. And any of the ones that kind of like either spawn like goblins or any of that stuff, I'd try to keep them like out of the way of those. And then basically I'd try to put those light posts down in a lot of those spots that would end up being like the monster closets. It didn't always work, and you'd still have like huge amounts of things. Did you guys use the storm temple or whatever the heck it's called?
I did for a little bit, but after it killed me a couple times, I'm like, yep, done with this.
Yeah, it's a little annoying that it hits you as well as everything else kind of the same way, but if you're fighting large amounts of monsters, the percentages are higher that it's going to hit them than you.
And if you have an army of skeletons, it's about even.
Yeah, well, I mean, I wasn't a huge fan of the Necromancer, so...
Oh, we're so close to getting into that.
It's the next thing on the show notes.
Yeah, it's actually the previous thing, and I just glossed right by it. And like you keep trying to transition
into it like 3 times.
And I'm just like, no!
Bounce around.
Yeah! It's my show.
We have
I'm
show
the hero.
notes for if we're not following them.
We get very distracted, Burns. We get very distracted. I have 8 copies of show notes around me. They're all... Casey, what was your favorite class to play?
I think the Necromancer for me was the most fun.
Yeah, you're right. Joey?
But I use the warrior the most. The Necromancer seemed more like build dependent, where if I didn't get the right what the heck is the book called?
Grimoire.
Grimoire. If I didn't get the right grimoire and the right ring and necklace combinations, amulet combinations, it seemed like I would either die or have to retreat a lot faster with the necromancer than with the warrior. The warrior, there was a little bit more leeway where he's just easier to absorb damage with the warrior, so I could have a lot longer runs for farming with the warrior. Like I said, I always made it to, I don't know how long the loops were, but my monsters were always at level 10 or 11 with the warrior before I would leave the loop. With a necromancer, it was always like, they were only like 4 or 5 unless I had some really, really kick butt skeletons going.
Good catch, thank you. I think this entire game, and this is probably the biggest weakness for me in this entire game, I think this entire game is build agnostic because the gear is so random and you're constantly flipping so much. I found it impossible to try to focus on one kind of run. Like, I wanted to do a warrior pure damage run. Could never, find pure damage on all of the gear. I wanted to try a run where I did warrior damage to everything and, try to build up the monster closets and just wipe them all at once. I wanted to do necromancer runs with as many skeletons as possible. That one I was kind of able to pull off, but I couldn't find any way to maximize the rogue, and it was a constant frustration with me. Bernsey, are you with me on this point?
Yeah, that's part of the reason why I didn't enjoy the necromancer, because every time I played it, it kept feeling like it was throwing gear at me that I really didn't give a crap about. And it's like, just give me the stuff that either makes my skeletons more skillful, makes my skeletons stronger, or gives me more skeletons. I don't need any of this other garbage. I don't care
regen and evasion for the win.
Yeah, or defense. I don't really give a squat about that. I want my things to hit hard so that I don't have to worry about defense, right? The amulets are usually good for getting your magic barrier up, and once you get that up to a certain level, for a while you're pretty good. The problem is when you can't generate enough skeletons to stay ahead of the attacks coming in, right? And so I think that's where the gear got most frustrating for me, was because there would be so many times as the necromancer that it felt like I wasn't getting the right gear to make it as good as it could have been. And so that's why the warrior is my favorite class. And I also don't understand why everybody starts with warrior gear if you're a different class, unless there's something you unlock later that gives you
upgrade the armory or whatever I think it's the armory.
Got it. And so I guess then that makes sense. There's your carrot, unlock it, so you start with gear that makes sense for your character instead of just letting it sit there to die or to get composted into your little
gear
circles
farm
at the top of the screen. So part of me really liked the rogue at first, just because it was the Ron Popeil of classes.
Don't understand.
Because it's just, you set it and forget it, and you go all the way around your loop, then you get your bunch of gear, you look at it at that point, put it in, whatever fits, and then just run again. You don't have to worry about gear till you get to the camp again.
I think that's an interesting idea. I also thought that, that's really neat. It's okay, I pick all my stuff and see if I survive. But the problem is, I rarely survived.
Yeah, rogue was hard.
It's because they don't have enough defense, really, right?
Yeah,
and
they can't regen.
You're a glass cannon, and you just it's nice because you get the dual wield, and deal a whole lot of damage. But yeah, not being able to upgrade as you're doing your run, having to wait for the campfire ends up being, I think, a detriment to it more than anything in the end, because it was really tough to play with the rogue, I thought.
I try to run with the rogue. At some point, you can unlock the arsenal as a tile you can place on the board, and that gives you an extra inventory slot. And for the rogue, it gives you the amulet, so you get the magic shield.
Nice.
This was after I unlocked trees and rivers. I'm going to make this zombie as fast as possible. I'm going to build up that magic shield as much as I can and see if I can survive with the rogue. Same deal. Couldn't survive. Even with a magic shield, even with as fast attacks as possible and the highest percentage for critical hit as possible, the rogue just didn't seem viable to me. I played probably 85% necro, 10% warrior, 5% rogue.
The rogue was the first class I fought the lich as, because I didn't understand what was going on. If the game explained that was what was triggering the boss, I missed that?
No, they didn't, because the first time I fought the Lich 2, I was just like, oh, well, I don't want to end my loop yet. I don't know why it's giving me an option to retreat right now. It's like, well, let's keep going. It's like, oh, boss fight, get my butt kicked.
Yeah.
Lose a lot of resources. Great.
Yeah.
Fun game.
But then the next time I played, I went as a warrior and I slayed the Lich relatively easily. I had it down to like a third health as the rogue before I got killed. That first time I fought him. But I don't know. I think I feel like it kind of falls into what you were saying, Tom, is that the gear is so random that it's really hard to try to specialize on certain things with it. And that, I think, does become a detriment to the game in some ways, unless there is some way to unlock that you could mitigate that in some way, shape, or form down the line.
And as far as I can tell, you can't. And I can just picture Jim listening to this and just rolling his eyes and saying, like, yeah, there's an element of randomness. Like, it's not going to line up every time. I played this game for 20 hours. No S, I played 20 hours. I never felt like I had an optimal build, ever, in all that time. That is a lot of time walking around in a circle, dude. But I did play the Necro most. I beat the first 3 bosses with the Necro. The Lich, I kind of stormed through them. I would often... It all depended on the level up traits that I got. There were 2 that were particularly valuable. One gives your skeletons an extra 0.25 level every time you complete a loop. So if you don't get that one of the first 2 level ups, guess what? It's a 5 loop resource run. The other one that you need in that first 5 is one where every time you summon a skeleton, you get 0.5 magic shield. So like if you can get those 2 as your first 2 level ups, that could potentially be a boss run if things fall the right way. And then
Interesting. I like the one where it divided all the damage done between all the skeleton and the necromancer.
Also helpful, but for me it had to be one of those first 2 first. Like if I didn't get those 2 locked, by the time I would get to a higher level and like get the one where the level of the skeleton goes up every loop, if I didn't hit that early, it just wasn't valuable enough towards the end of the run.
See, and I felt Horde was the strongest.
Horde
ability.
That's the one where you could potentially summon 2 extras?
No,
or?
you start with, like, when you start the loop at the campfire, you start with, like, whatever your, like, 2 or 3 of them, and they stay until they get killed. And if you could get that with the one that allows them to, if they kill a monster, regenerate, it's kind of like you're just running through the majority of your loop with, those 2 or 3 starting skeletons, which I thought it made me feel the most powerful as that character than any of the other classes. And then I knew I had a problem once they died, and it was like, oh, okay, things are just like chewing through me. Probably time to end
I guess I never used that one.
Each loop they respawn.
So
but you don't, like, once they die, they don't respawn.
No, then you summon regular
during
ones.
the loop?
It's just your normal.
Okay.
It's just like the normal ones, but these ones they stay, and between battles they retain, like, and as you're moving around the loop, like, they're skeletons following you on the map.
Oh, really?
As you go around, yeah. And then as they die off, there's fewer skeletons following you around.
That's
but
funny.
they retain their health between loops and continue fighting. Which I don't know. It was an interesting one, I thought, and that was probably the strongest one of the level ups that I had for the Necromancer, at least.
One of my favorite moments, I had 6 skeletons on my team.
Nice.
So like it fills up the circle around you, and then like it opens a panel on the left for extra skeletons, and they become ranged skeletons.
Oh, interesting.
Oh, nice.
It's kind of neat. So I beat the first 2 bosses on relatively normal runs. I get to the 3rd boss with the Necromancer, and I'm pretty well set up. And you can unlock crossbowmen, which shoot arrows at the first 2 tiles. I'm like, all right, I'm going to smoke this boss this time. So I fight the boss, and I beat him, but I had set ruins right next to the campfire. And ruins produce these worm enemies, and they also shoot from range. So I had four worms shooting fire at me from the far right side of the screen. So I killed the boss. Worms kill me. Story doesn't progress. So, all right.
Brutal.
Well, I'm done with this game forever. Great. So how did it all come together for you guys? Bernsey, what lessons did you learn walking this endless loop?
Yeah, I mean, I learned more lessons talking about it than I did playing the game, so I guess there's something in that. And I don't know, maybe that's a positive and a negative of the game, I guess. As the game goes on, you either push it to get more materials, so push it one more loop to try to get more materials, or you grind for piddly stuff that you don't need over and over again until it piles up to enough you need. And to me, that just became a little bit more of a frustrating grind than something that was enjoyable like it was early in the game.
I found a sweet spot, kind of with my 5 loop runs with that. Relatively decent rewards without too much work. In general, do you like push your luck mechanics in games? Like, can you think of a push your luck mechanic that you particularly enjoy?
That's a good question. I'm trying to think of
I can't even think of
would
one
match
game with a push your
not to
luck
this
mechanic.
level. And it's like, and I guess knowing that the loss, if you're mid loop and nope out, isn't as stringent, because it was just hard because it's just a lot of circles with numbers on them, and it's just like and so yeah, I can't think of another game that has that level, a video game anyway, that has that level of push your luck as to whether you can. And I think the first loop area, I think it's fine, but it's so much more detrimental as you get to at least the second loop, which is as far as I made it. I didn't beat the second boss, so.
And Casey, what lessons did you learn on the mean streets of Loop Hero?
That I shouldn't push it when I think I should, more than anything.
Just don't put any monster tiles down. You can just run around like Daytona. It's great.
That's my problem. Is I would get into trouble. Like once you get up into level 10 or 11, the monsters get pretty difficult, and you always think, oh, I got enough vampirism, I got enough heal over time, I got and you don't usually. So I learned that the hard way a couple times, because by that point in time, you have a buttload of resources too. So losing 70% and when you try to push it a little bit and you just get smoked by 4 goblins. It's
freaking goblins. They're so fast. It's just maddening.
Yeah, the goblins got me a lot, and it's better to just use an Oblivion and just smoke them too. So that's another thing that I learned, is that if you have an Oblivion and there's 4 goblin bad guys, or spiders didn't usually seem to be too bad. It was goblins, the skeletons. If there was a vampire that ended up getting in there with them, could be really, really, really hard too.
But vampires give so much experience. You got to plop those mansions down everywhere.
I know, but yeah, it's just there's a very delicate balance, and once you get to a certain point, it's better to just retreat, because those resources are extremely important to build things in town, and that's how you get better and end up winning this game.
I think you guys would chuckle at my build. I unlocked the towers or whatever gives you crossbowmen. They shoot the first 2 tiles, so I literally pile everything I can on those first 2 tiles, both before and after the campfire.
So they just get shot by the crossbowmen?
Yep. Nice. Yeah, so I have an army of skeletons, 2 crossbowmen helping out, and you get oodles of experience, and if you're not playing as the rogue, a fair amount of gear, and I don't know, except for placing the runes next to the campfire. This whole world is chaos, and my advice to someone starting it is just don't think too hard. Just grip it and rip it. Throw some stuff down and mow through some monsters.
Yeah, I don't know. I just wish that there was more. I wish there could be more strategy around the gearing in some way, shape, or form. Unless there's some secret algorithm as to if you use these amounts of cards for your environment that you're putting down in the loop, it's going to net more of these types of gear. If there's that level of thing, it didn't become apparent to me, but if there was, that would be interesting. And as we were talking, I was just thinking, I wonder if it makes more sense to play with fewer of the cards, because you don't have to play with the max of 12. Is it better to play with just 8?
Yeah, I played with some smaller decks when I specifically wanted other resources or didn't want too much of a challenge. I'm up to 15 cards in my deck.
Oh, okay.
Isn't there a town square that unlocks crafting? Do you get to craft equipment? I guess I didn't get to that point.
There's a supplying system. So there's 4 different categories of items. There's food, there's furniture, there's 2 other things that escape me, and you have 15 boxes for each of them. And as you're adventuring, you'll occasionally find one of these items that'll slot in there. You could find garlic, which will increase the damage you do to vampires. You could find shoe tacks that do something dumb, or you could find the ancient mirror, which ups your damage versus bosses. So you can both craft. You could use resources to randomly craft an item like that, or you could break down those items to get other resources, which was occasionally helpful when I needed bronze orb of whatever. I could see what would break down in the bronze orb. It's like, oh, well, I hope you're not a useful item because you gone forever now.
Okay, so you don't get to craft, like, items for your characters.
It seems like it's more artifacts that, like, give you bonuses against certain things.
Yeah, it's more like passive buffs. An interesting thing, you have your character board with all the potential inventory that you can wear. There's a lot of stuff left to be unlocked there. Like, each character has, like, a full slot of stuff, but you only get, for the warrior, sword, armor, and boots and shield, or maybe just sword, armor, and shield to start. And then if you play the arsenal, you can also get a helmet. So there's another ring slot. There's other things that look like they should be available, and I don't know if you just have to keep upgrading the armory to get those, but I'm 20 hours in. I feel like I should understand how to get the most gear in my character.
So you never beat the third boss completely? You took him down, but then the fire worms shot you? Okay.
Yep. So didn't get credit for it, so I don't know exactly what comes next. But I think I might be done with this game.
Yeah?
I think, Casey... Well, I'm done with this game. Casey, what are your overall thoughts, final impressions, and takeaways from Loop Hero?
I thought it was a lot of fun. I mean, like I said, I'm 10 hours in, and I really feel like I've only scratched the surface so far. It would be, I think, a great mobile game if they could somehow figure out how to put everything on a smaller screen.
Yeah, I did really enjoy actually playing it on the deck using the Xbox cloud gaming service. That was a lot of fun, and as like a bite-sized thing, I'm right there with you. Like, it is a lot of fun to do a run. It is less fun to think, how the F am I going to beat this freaking game, and what else do I have to unlock, and how the hell do I get cosmic orbs? There's no mage-type enemies. What are you telling me, Encyclopedia?
Yeah, I think, with the grindy aspect of it, it would be nice to just hop on your phone, do a loop, do a run or two, and then that's it. Yeah, like you would slowly accumulate those resources necessary over time, and it wouldn't make it as bad of a grind instead of just sitting down for 3-4 hours at a time and going through it.
Bernsey, this your game of the year or what?
No. I really enjoyed the beginning, like I was talking about before. Once I figured out how to get around a game-breaking bug that I kept getting.
What bug did you run into?
So...
And you were playing on the Xbox Series S,
It must
correct?
just be on the Series S, but if you have if you have your console set to 4K UHD, which, if it's supposed to be 4K, like, why wouldn't you have it set to that? There was this consistent, like, every, 5 to 7 second screen flicker where the screen would go black and then come back on. And, the first, 2 times I tried to play the game, it, kept doing that. I was like, what in the world? And so finally I searched online and stuff like that, and some people said that they turned the 4K off. And so I basically had to switch the console back to 1080p so that it wouldn't do it. And thankfully that, stopped doing it at that point.
I should try that with Marvel Avengers.
I think you ran into a much different problem.
Can I play this in SD?
So no, you have the solution, Tom, as to how to actually continue in that game. You just got to delete your save file and start over.
Yeah, or go and find their servers at Crystal Dynamics and hit it with a real big hammer.
Well, I mean, the game's on maintenance mode at this point. Crystal Dynamics isn't even owned by Square Enix anymore, and so I don't know. I think they've all moved past Marvel Avengers, so it's probably time that you should too, Tom. Maybe.
Yeah, I will forgive, but I will never forget, Burns. I will never forget. But, so back to your game of the year, Loop Hero.
Yeah, it just
game of the century.
I hit this wall of grinding that just got frustrating, and talking about it, I have a couple of different things I could try to get around it, and there's it's possible that once I get through this little bit of a hold up, that things would start to go more smoothly again, and I would get into it again. I guess it's in some ways similar to a FromSoft game in that point where sometimes you're just going to be frustrated with it and you just need to take time away from it for a while, and then once you go back, then you're like, oh yeah, I do like this game. I don't know that it's going to be to that level with Loop Hero, but I mean, I'm glad I played it because it was an interesting experience, and it's a unique game in its own right.
Yeah, no, definitely unique. There's nothing else quite like it. I often thought of Enter the Gungeon when I was playing this game, and it's I had more fun with this probably than Enter the Gungeon. Enter the Gungeon had some weird and wacky stuff. I guess I like not having the dexterous elements of it. It's can I outsmart this loop or not? Am I going to build myself into a corner?
If you want to add dexterousness to it, You should play with a controller with drift. That's what I played my first probably 2 hours on, and I was like, I don't know. I should have just turned the controller off and grabbed one of the other two that was sitting right next to me. But it was
That's
just
a lot
like,
of work.
It was
The cemetery ended up four squares to the left.
Oh my
and
gosh!
right.
And like trying to select the cards in the bottom, or just like I'd go down there and like so I was trying to use R1, R2, and I would hit R1, and it would just like scroll through like every single one. I'm like, God dang it! Like what the heck is going on? And then like I'm hitting B, and it's like flipping through everything. It was like, oh my gosh! It was so. Ridiculous. But yes, dexterity was needed for that, because I'm like, all right, it's there, quick! Hit the spot!
Thankfully, you're good at everything, dude. Otherwise, that would have been just a wretched experience. Anything else you guys want to say about Loop here?
Oh, I thought it was fun. I would play it again. I don't think I probably will, because we're going to move on to the next game, but I would keep playing if it was on my phone.
Aren't you going to say your standard line about going back to it?
No, I haven't said that for a while, and I've never gone back to a single game that I've said that about.
Did you try playing it like cloud gaming at all? Because I know you've played some of the other games cloud gaming wise.
It requires a controller.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's no built-in controller on the phone for this one. It actually requires you to Bluetooth in a controller.
Interesting, because it'd be funny if it would just let you do touchscreen, so you could just drag the stuff.
Yeah, you'd think that would be okay.
Yeah, it works really well with a mouse. Well, we are moving on from Loop Hero. Next month for Game Pass Forever, we play Chicory. Chicory, am I saying that right?
That's right.
Chicory?
No, Chicory.
Yeah, Chicory, great. Chicory is a top-down adventure game in a coloring book world full of vibrant characters, using painting powers to explore, solve puzzles, make friends, and draw on anything. From the creators of Wandersong and Celeste. Casey, you put this game up. Why were you interested in Chicory?
I just thought it sounded way different than anything that we've played. We've played adventure games, we've played RPGs before, but the coloring your way through a black and white world is something that just sounded very very cool and very interesting.
Yeah, Epic Mickey wasn't an option, so this was the next best thing, right?
Sure.
Or The Blob.
I don't know what The Blob is.
A couple of Wii games that involve color. Brinzy, what's your level of anticipation for Chicory? I don't know why I'm looking at the show notes. It's not on there. It's like, oh, here's a prop I can stare at intently.
For a second, I thought you were just looking at the back of the show notes. And it was just a blank sheet, and you're just like, "This is my script. I'm reading from nothing. It's making all sorts of sense." I'm excited to play Chicory. It's one of those that I've heard a lot about. A lot of people. This was like, their indie game of the year. What was it? 2 years ago when it came out. Similar to Loop Hero for a lot of people. It's very different type of game.
Is this just the year of Loop Hero? And why on earth aren't patrons like selecting my games? Like, thinking of the top games last year, Jedi Fallen Order, that was a Tom title. Immortals Phoenix Rising, that was a Tom title. I did
it again.
Always.
The third place game, I'm pretty sure that was me too. Like, Casey, how do you keep winning these votes? It's driving me crazy.
I don't know. I just go on to the Xbox Game Pass games page and
scroll randomly,
scroll
put my
until
finger
I
on
see
one
one that I like, and I click on it and I read about it, and I'm like, oh, that seems kind of cool. I'll put that one up.
And from my perspective, I am glad that we didn't get Torment Tides of Numenera. I mean, I'm excited to play that game at some point, but not in the month where I have to play Elden Ring and Final Fantasy 16. I do not have time to play a top-down 100-hour RPG.
I don't think it's 100 hours. I thought it was like 8 or 9 hours.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I thought this one was much more like novel-based. I should actually look that up, because I thought it would be a pretty reasonable ask with the other stuff that we have going on with OiO.
I don't know. Most of those other games like that tend to be pretty hefty, but I could be wrong. But
I don't think that this was necessarily like a Baldur's Gate follower. I think it was a spiritual successor to Torment, which was a similar style game back in the day, but I think this is a wildly different, more cinematic, more narrative experience.
Is it from the people that made Pillars of Eternity?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay. I could be wrong on that then too.
Yeah. Apparently I don't know anything about games though, so we'll see.
It's just all luck of the draw. Like, people pick things that sing to them at that point, or games that they've played that they're really excited for other people to play. No. And it's just the way it is.
Or they're fans of the show and they realize Casey's never played a video game before. They're like, oh, what direct did you find this month? Yeah, that's how I get a little bit more Metal Hellsinger up in this bee.
Which, oddly enough, today when I had my Xbox on, it randomly popped up that Metal Hellsinger's ESRB rating changed to mature 17+. Randomly today, for some reason.
Yeah.
I don't know why. But,
Cool. They patched in some boobs. Great.
Demon boobs.
Demon boobs. If you enjoy this content, please back our show on Patreon. This standalone segment, who doesn't? This standalone segment, Game Pass Forever, is tied to a specific tier of support. Back us for as little as $2 a month. Check it out at patreon.com/OiO. Thank you so much for listening. Stay inside, kids.